approaches the machine, infusing the insect and puts his hand under the needle. An obscure red-shaded substance infiltrates his DNA and for some time loses Bugman. However, things didn't work out as expected and his life turned into a calamity. Today, we will recap the tale of the 2001 film Earth vs. the Bug. Quentin Kemmer awakens to the meddling sound of the morning timer and starts his everyday morning schedule. He lives in an unfortunate area, so he's as of now familiar with the problematic neighborhood occupants. There's the intoxicated elderly person, Willie, shouting under his window today, yet the person welcomes him with a grin. Quentin is eating with his canine Thor and perusing the most recent paper which reports on a risky criminal with 7 casualties in his possession. The person wishes he could battle evil all alone, however. For the time being, he can find a new line of work as a safety officer. On leaving the loft, he meets another neighbor on the stepwell, a lovely young lady named Stephanie. The troublemakers get considerably bolder, undermining. The shy and genuinely frail safety officer with viciousness Stephanie steps in for her neighbor, a lot to the person's humiliation. Prior to going to work, Quentin comes by the comic book and toy store where his pal Han works, encircled by superheroes. The person feels more sure a collectible Insect Man activity figure is conveyed to the store, which quickly gets Quentin invigorated. Han vows to clutch the expensive activity figure for his companion until he can set aside up sufficient cash. He likewise provides him with another issue of the Bugman comic book, which makes sense of the whole origin story of the superhuman with his mind set presently raised. Quentin shows up working in the natural chemistry lab. What's more, believes that a failure like him can't get a beautiful young lady like Stephanie to like him. His accomplice guarantees Quentin that he is a fair person and says he is exceptionally glad for him. They look through the window of one of the lab regions, where researchers are probing bugs. The two observer the organization of a red-shaded infusion to one of the guinea pigs. Quentin is keen on the destiny of the bug. One of the researchers shuts the blinds to the inquisitive onlookers. Evening shows up, and the Watchmen shift reaches a conclusion. Quentin is perusing another comic book, causing Nick a deep sense of dissatisfaction. The young fellow clarifies for his more established accomplice that comic books help him fantasize and have brilliant dreams. He talks with profound respect about the superhuman bug who helps individuals and brings down reprobates. Unexpectedly, he sees 2 obscure men going after a researcher and effectively hauling her into a lap. The Watchman presses the caution button, yet it doesn't go off. Furnished with a pepper shower, Nick races to the salvage himself. In the meantime, Quentin gets back to the security office and sees on the CCTV film an armed criminal abducting his accomplice. He hurries to the lab, however is captured by 2 more seasoned and more experienced cops who are additionally on the job in the structure. The gatekeepers start to storm in, however Quentin ends one of the police. A gunfight breaks out in the room. When the sound of gunfire blurs, Quentin and official Williams go inside. The workplace is totally destroyed, and none of the members have figured out how to endure the battle. Quentin rushes up to Nick and his partner passes away right in his arms. The young man is saddened and struggles to come to his senses after the passing away of his older partner. He is confronted by Officer Williams, outraged that Nick's helplessness has resulted in his partner's loss. Quentin commonly blames fellow's accomplice for the episode, for which official Williams begins battling with him. Their conflict is intruded on by analyst Jack Grillo, who shows up at the crime location. He excuses the forceful cop and advises him to quiet down. The lab specialist reports to the analyst that there are no resources in the structure and the motivation behind the assault stays obscure. It just so happens the natural chemistry lab is doing examination into the obstruction. The executives fires him for neglecting to play out his obligations. Journalists appear on the scene. One of them steps on the insect that got away from the lab, however it stays safe. He goes to the room where the bug was being tested and approaches the machine, infusing the insect and puts his hand under the needle. An obscure red-hued substance infiltrates his DNA and for some time passes out. The next day, Stephanie sees that the morning timer in her flatmate's condo is as yet ringing. This stresses the young lady a tad, since they normally go to work simultaneously. In the meantime, Quentin's loft is a wreck. His things are dispersed on the floor, and he personally rests exposed in a bath loaded up with ice. She chooses to beware of him. The way to her neighbor's condo is open, and she heads inside. She finds what is happening inside bizarre. The fridge is completely open, and the morning timer has been ringing. Since early morning, Thor focuses to the washroom entryway, follows the canine. The young lady is stunned to track down hints of red fluid on the tub. Quentin out of nowhere shows up from behind the entryway, terrifying the young lady considerably more. The young fellow tells her his adaptation of what occurred. He is as yet not feeling good, so Stephanie, while treating the man's injuries, the medical caretaker sees a cut blemish on his arm. She goes crazy, believing he's experiencing drug withdrawal. However, Quentin guarantees her that he was recently pissed and coincidentally pricked himself with something in the lab. Stephanie quiets down and gives her neighbor sympathies. For the deficiency of his accomplice, Quentin concedes that he is worn out on being an unprotected do-better and truly needs to change. Before she takes off to her place, Stephanie clues to her neighbor that she enjoys decent folks like him. Quentin grins affectionately, yet soon another agony assault overpowers him. Feeling exceptionally eager, he recovers all the meat he has in the fridge and enthusiastically devours the prepared food. Subsequently, soon thereafter, he spruces up, all in dark, and gazes tragically at a photograph of him and his accomplice together, prior to leaving for the bar where the police like to hang out. There he watches out for official Williams, who is living it up with some blonde young lady. The barkeep sees a strange tattoo on Quentin's arm. What's more, starts to discuss his tattoos. The person is amazed to find dark lines looking like cobwebs on the tattoo. He asks the barkeep, assuming that official Williams is wanting to leave the bar with the woman. The man tells the young fellow not to engage with the cop in light of his terrible attitude. The barkeep likewise lets him know that the blondie has a spas, and it's Jack Grillo. The gossip is that the criminal investigator Quentin knows about that inclination more than some other. Jack Grillo himself strolls into the bar. He moves toward Williams' table and requests that his better half return home. Williams quickly connects with another young lady, and Quentin stays reluctant to fight back against the cop for the attack and leaves the bar. Be that as it may, he before long has an opportunity to scrutinize his new capacities. Stephanie gets back after working all day, and notifications somebody following her. Similarly, as she is going to enter her loft, an obscure bad guy snatches her and thumps her to the floor. The young lady frantically attempts to oppose. However, the miscreant is a lot more grounded than she is. At the entryway, Quentin is diverted by a vagrant Willie, who requests to get a buck to purchase a vehicle. Out of nowhere, he faculties with his entire body that something terrible is happening inside the house. He tracks down his neighbor's keys on the floor of the entrance. Furthermore, races to her guide. In the interim, the reprobate hits Stephanie and begins to take her garments off. Quentin prevents him from doing his arrangement and with a solitary maneuver tosses the criminal a couple of meters away. Furthermore, breaks the entryway of the following loft with his body. Stephanie steadily starts to recuperate. Her rescuer likes to stay an obscure superhuman, so he quickly runs down the emergency exit. Quentin sees that the tattoo on his arm is getting considerably greater. The police drove by investigator Jack Grill show up on the scene. They lay out that the antagonist's neck is snapped like a twig from the strong toss. Grillo investigates Stephanie about what occurred, yet the young lady doesn't recall the essence of her guardian angel. Quentin appears at the entryway of her condo, and the young lady races into his arms. He is excited with his massive new power. His fantasy has materialized. He has become like his most loved superhuman. The drained Jack Grillo gets back and enlightens his better half concerning the new wrongdoing. He laments that he didn't take out the criminal himself, and some obscure legend is presently disposing of the fiendish in the city. The analyst offers his significant other to attempt to repair things. However, she has for some time been snoozing toasted the place of obviousness boisterously toward the beginning of the day following a restless evening. The person chooses to rehash the Bugman comics to sort out some way to be a superhuman. The primary thing Quentin does is respect his rambling tattoo in his new tone body, then like his golden calf. He introduces an observation camera in the lobby. He likewise drapes a lounger in his space to supplant his bug web bed. Because of the outside video reconnaissance, Quentin spots Stephanie in the passage. Conveying encloses, he quickly leaves to the lobby. Stressed that the young lady has chosen to move out after the assault, Stephanie needs to take a pointless things to the storm's cellar, and he requests to go with her outside. They are indeed badgering by the nearby lawbreakers. Yet this time Quentin capably fends them off. Stephanie is intrigued by the young men's activities, and she turns out to be significantly more thoughtful to her neighbor. Quentin needs to admit his sentiments to her, yet coincidentally drops her case of things. It would seem Stephanie likewise cherishes superhuman comics, and she and Quentin share much more, practically speaking, than he thought. After a heartfelt second together, the chap nods off happily. Where a Goliath bug assaults unprotected individuals in a vehicle, Hans sees that insects go after their casualties, so he gets a kick out of the chance to see them shudder out of uncontrollable dread trepidation subsequent to being caught. The young lady in the film might have recently claimed to be. He asks Quentin to pay for the collectible activity figure of the superhuman. Bug, however, his companion gets arrogant and simply takes the toy for himself. At home, Quentin has pipe dreams. Furthermore, is nauseated by the food. The person awakens around midnight. In a real sense hanging, he like the genuine Spider-Man. Begins shooting from his chest. He chooses to test his new capacities and covers different things in the loft with his web. The person doesn't stop there and chooses to immobilize his canine Thor with the thick dangers, understanding that he could hurt Thor. The young fellow runs out of the house in fear. He goes through the roads in a dazed state. However, his craving just develops further. At long last, he shows up at a corner shop, where he sees that the assistant has been gone after by an obscure attacker. Anxious to rebuff the lawbreaker, he pushes him over onto the alcohol racks with the deal's young lady. The miscreant's dormant body holding back tears. It just so happens she is the guilty party's sweetheart and will report Quentin to the police. Rather than saying thanks to him, burned out on her shouts, the newly discovered insect man shoots a web and immobilizes the young lady. Quentin's body proceeds to transform, and he is sickened to find that his arm is transforming into a paw. Official Williams blasts into the store, and Quentin stows away from him. Among the crates in the wake of finding the shop young lady toward the back, the cop attempts to determine from her what occurred. Quentin can never again limit himself and assaults the cop and hauls him away. In the first part of the day, Stephanie sees their external her entryway. A note from Quentin is connected to his collar, asking his neighbor to briefly deal with his pet. The stressed young lady attempts to contact Quentin, yet nobody responds to her. The depleted young fellow lies on the bed and watches his darling on the surveillance camera. He wishes he could educate her regarding his condition, however stresses that the young lady will be scared of the beast he is transforming into. Simultaneously, something is effectively being processed in the person's enlarged stomach at the location of the crime. The perceptive criminal investigator sees drops of red fluid on the means and an ID of the missing official Williams. The deal's young lady, who endure, guarantees the police that they were gone after by a person with a pole rather than a hand. Quentin stirs once more. Around midnight, with a sharp aggravation in his gums, he looks at his mouth in the mirror from which a bug sting is gradually emerging. Quentin is surprised by the new change. What's more, shouts in dread at his shouts. Stephanie surges in and demands that the kid open the entryway for her. A contacting discussion happens between them. Quentin inquires as to whether she would consent to go out on the town with him. A befuddled Stephanie admits that she is needed to go out on the town with him for quite a while and has been hanging tight for her neighbor to ask her out. She asks Quentin to have a heartfelt night at the present time. He has trusted that he have some control over his superpowers and change into a bug, yet by night the person becomes eager once more and drinks the entire loft searching for food. Stephanie hears her neighbor shouting and whipping through the wall, yet doesn't have the foggiest idea how to help him. Soon Quentin figures out how to fulfill his appetite. The person draws the crooks into the cellar of the house. and has them for supper. Jack Grillo's significant other is miserable about her missing darling. She begs for her better half's mercy and beseeches him to track down official Williams. The lady is persuaded that the criminal investigator knows her darling's whereabouts and is purposely concealing him from everybody. The disappointed Grillo leaves his untrustworthy spouse, and she tosses a glass afterward. The experienced criminal investigator Grillo is upset by the reality that the lab's administration keeps the exploration being finished. Their strictly confidential mystery under the danger of a court order. He powers the top of the lab to let him know every bit of relevant information. The man concedes that the researchers are probing bugs, analyzing their capacity to recover in their unstoppable longing to crash, however much prey as could be expected. In any case, they have never yet infused the bug substance into people, and can't express out loud whatever results it might prompt. Stephanie tries and tragically fails to figure out what's going on to Quentin. Quentin asks his companion not to move. He gives Hun his cash back for the activity figure and requests that his companion help him to remember the shortcoming of his most loved superhuman. Hun says that the justice fighter's insect has a human heart, assuming it quits beating. The hero will likewise leave this world after getting the data. Quentin leaves, smothering the impulse companion. Analyst Jack Grillo is sitting in the bar, discouraged about his disappointments at work and his separation with his significant other. In the wake of suffocating his distress in liquor, he chooses to proceed with his examination and goes to Quentin's home once more. At this point, the kid has totally transformed into a beast. Without sitting tight for a response from Quentin, he returns to his vehicle. Grillo suspects that there might be human DNA in the web tests, however his partners won't take it for examination. One of the cops cautions their desired criminal investigator him. Dismissed from everything related this issue all through the whole time. Grillo is trailed by his significant other, trusting that he will lead her to official Williams. The analyst chooses to trust his expert impulses and enters the cellar of Quentin's home. What's more, the analyst is occupied by her. Williams chooses to shoot himself in the head. Mrs. Grillo is hauled by Quentin. Criminal investigator drives the attacker away. However, it is past the point of no return. His significant other passes away. In the interim, Stephanie gets back, and notification that the window on the subsequent floor has been broken. The young lady sees Quentin outline across the lobby. The person has failed to keep a grip on himself and has transformed into a revolting freak with 6 paws. Standing out from despite his good faith, he goes after Stephanie and hauls her after him. Grillo hears a commotion higher up and races to help, yet Quentin has proactively gotten away with his casualty. Following the cobweb, the investigator shows up at a neglected structure. They're the unnerved stuck to an immense cobweb. By this point, Quentin has totally appeared as a bug, however, has figured out how to hold a portion of his mental soundness. He requests that the investigator shoot him in the heart. To stop him and save the young lady investigator, Grillo falls once more into a trance and wonders whether or not to shoot the beast. Stephanie likewise asks the person to wake up and accepts fixing everything is not past the point of no return. The young lady thanks the hero inside him for saving her from his new distorted and wild structure. As the story closes, Hun discusses the new comic book Extraordinary about Quentin the Superhuman, who was a companion of his. So, what was your take of this film? Leave it in the remarks underneath, and in the event that you loved the video, if it's not too much trouble, and subscribe in for more film recaps. See you sometime later.